Hey, everyone. During the race, this athlete got hurt really bad, but he still rejected multiple attempts from his coach to end his participation. And ultimately, he finished the game despite losing his balance and falling down several times. So what makes this story so interesting is that although he came last out of all the athletes, he actually received a bigger cheer from the audience than the gold medalist. That's because his never-give-up spirit inspired everyone watching. And although he won no medal, he left a legacy that still inspires people to this day. I'm going to tell you everything about this amazing, true story, starting with how this athlete trained for years before finally qualifying for the Olympic marathon. But before we begin, make sure you subscribe if you want to learn more about amazing stories like this one. John Stephen Akhwari was born on February 29, 1943, in a village in Tanzania, which at the time was known as Tanganyika. His father, Joseph, was a police officer, and his mother, Maria, was a housewife. John was the second oldest of 5 brothers, and they lived a poor life in a small hut made of mud and thatch. Despite living in poverty, John had big dreams. From a young age, he wanted to become an Olympian. Unfortunately, his family didn't think this was a realistic goal. They wanted him to focus on getting a good education instead. Nevertheless, whenever he could, John would sneak out of his house and run through the jungle. He would jump over bushes and evade wild animals while training in secret. This continued until one day he was discovered by a PE teacher who found him running through the forest. The teacher immediately recognized John's talent and offered to train him. After receiving permission from John's parents, the teacher put him on a strict training regimen, waking him up every morning before sunrise. Together, they would run through the tall grass and over rough terrain. By doing this for hours every single day, John soon became one of the best runners in the country. In 1964, at the age of 21, John qualified to represent Tanganyika at the Tokyo Olympics. It was a monumental achievement for someone from a poor village who had never even seen an international sporting event. At the Games, John participated in the marathon, but unfortunately, he did not win a medal. Despite this, he was a national hero when he returned home. People lined the streets to catch a glimpse of him, and he was interviewed on television. However, the reality was that the Olympic Committee did not give each country much money for housing, food, or travel expenses. So, when the 1968 Olympics were announced in Mexico City, John didn't have enough money to attend. Once again, he needed to qualify and receive funding from the committee. So he began training harder than ever. John knew that if he didn't perform well, he might never get another chance to compete. So under the hot sun, pushing through exhaustion and hunger, he ran hundreds of miles every week. Finally, 6 months later, he was selected to be part of the Tanzanian team. Everyone in his village was incredibly proud. They organized a ceremony in his honor and gave him new shoes and clothes. Then, on October 1968, John boarded a plane to Mexico City. When he arrived, he was amazed by the modern facilities and experienced his first snowfall. It was nothing like the tropical climate he was used to. However, he quickly adapted to the new environment, and on October 26th, he competed in the marathon. From the moment the gun was fired, John felt something was wrong. He realized that he had forgotten to put on his contact lenses, and now he could unsee anything clearly. Despite this setback, John maintained his pace and stayed focused on qualifying for the next round. Fortunately, by the time he reached the 20-mile mark, he could see clearly enough to continue racing. However, at mile 23, disaster struck. John tripped over a pothole and fell to the ground. Pain shot through his right leg, and he could feel the bone protruding through his skin. Although he tried to get up, his leg buckled beneath him, and he collapsed again. But then something unexpected happened. As John lay on the ground, writhing in pain, his coach rushed to his side. "John, don't move," he said. "You're injured. I want you to stop the race." However, John responded, "No, my country did not send me 5,000 miles to start the race. They sent me to finish it." After hearing this, the coach realized that no matter what, John would try to continue. So he said, "Okay, if you want to finish the race, I will help you do it." Then his coach helped dress John's wound and carried him on his back for the next 2 miles. But soon he told his coach to put him down so he could walk on his own. Despite the pain, John was determined to keep going. However, midway through the race, his coach came upon him again and once again told him to stop. "John, please listen to me. You are not in good shape, and I am afraid you may faint or even go blind from exhaustion." Once again, John replied, "No, my country did not send me 5,000 miles to start the race. They sent me to finish it." This time, the coach was deeply moved by John's determination. So he stopped trying to convince him to quit. Meanwhile, hours earlier, the winner of the marathon had already crossed the line. The spectators were cheering loudly, but their support wasn't directed at the gold medalist. Instead, everyone was standing and applauding the last participant, John Akhwari. Blood was streaming down his leg, and he was limping as he walked across the finish line. But John didn't care about the cheers or the blood. He had finished the marathon. Then he collapsed to the ground, exhausted. The coach immediately rushed to his side and called for medical attention. It was clear that if he hadn't been found, he might have bled to death. Fortunately, after 3 hours of surgery, he was able to make a full recovery. Although John had completed the marathon, the official results showed that he had come last. And even though he didn't win a medal, he left a lasting impression on the world. The next day, the Olympic Committee honored John with a special award for his determination and perseverance. Additionally, an American journalist wrote an article about his heroic efforts, which was published around the world. Suddenly, John received letters from people all over the world congratulating him on his performance. He was invited to speak at schools, universities, and other public events. For a while, he even worked as a carpenter, but most people called him by his nickname, the Knight of the Marathon. Unfortunately, John's fame didn't last forever. Over time, he received fewer and fewer invitations. Eventually, he went back to his village where he lived the rest of his life working as a policeman. However, his legacy continued to inspire many athletes to never give up. In 2007, a movie producer contacted John and asked him if he would be willing to share his story on camera. Since then, it has been viewed millions of times and has inspired countless people around the world. Additionally, John's story has been used in many business seminars and leadership training programs. That's because his actions demonstrated that sometimes finishing is more important than winning. Of course, there were times when giving up would have been easier, but John chose to keep going no matter what. Sadly, on November 21st, 2012, John passed away due to complications from diabetes. He was 69 years old. Nevertheless, his inspiring story continues to be shared around the world. That's why, even today, people remember the runner who never gave up. It's time to make your voice heard. And before you go, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.